Okay, Katerina, should we begin?
Yes.
Cool.
Can we start screen?
Yes.
So let's begin. Hi everyone, welcome to today's product webinar about SpecFlow.Actions Playwright plugin. Jordan Western, our user journey support engineer at SpecFlow, and me, Katerina Gantichuk, social media, content and community manager at SpecFlow, welcome you to today's session. Before we start, let me say a couple of words as to how we are going to work. So, if you have any question, please use our Q&A tool and upvote questions that are interesting for you. When there are questions that are relevant to the current task, I will interrupt Jordan and he will answer them on the spot. All other questions will be answered at the end of the session. And also, during the webinar, we will run 2 polls. Please answer the question. We will really appreciate it. And let's go to the poll. So I'm launching poll. Okay, here's one. So have you used Playwright before?
Good. Looks like some people have heard about SpecFlowActions, which is good.
Yeah.
And some people are also familiar with Playwright and not so familiar. So that's also a mixed bag.
So let's wait a few seconds, probably.
Okay. Cool.
So should I answer the poll? Yes.
Yes.
And I'm sharing results. So as we see, some of people are familiar with Playwright. That's good. And then let's start. So Jordan, can you share your screen?
Yes. 2 seconds. Cool. So just a quick one before we start. So we often get questions about recordings and things. So anyone that's registered for the webinar will receive the recordings after the webinar has completed. We just need some time to obviously upload the recording to YouTube, and then we can share the link with you. So hopefully that clears that up. So a bit of background about SpecFlowActions for the people that haven't heard of it. So obviously SpecFlow has an open source project in GitHub where we like to create and add nice things for people to use. And one of those things was a project called SpecFlowActions, and its ambition was to, I guess, create NuGet packages or libraries for people to consume that helps them get started with their test automation or other related topics faster. So we're on can you see my screen, Katerina, just before we? You're on mute. Okay, I'm assuming you can see the screen. Either way, so if you come to SpecFlow.org and you want to find out a bit more about SpecFlowActions, then you can go to Learn at the top, and under best practices, there's code examples. And if the machine plays ball, there we go. So you can see quick start your test automation by using SpecFlow code snippets and plugins. There's some other good stuff on here as well, so feel free to check this out. Maybe Katerina can post the link in the chat. If not, I'll paste it in there in a bit.
Link to the SpecFlowActions, yes? Yes,
please, this page. Sorry, and yeah, so we've got these code libraries. These are the ones that exist already. Actually, there's an additional one here which was completed just recently, which is also for Windows app driver. So the site needs to be updated for this. But if you're interested in that, then you can check that out in the GitHub repository. So today we're interested in Playwright. So we can view the repo here, and this is the documentation. If you're looking to have a play around or maybe try and consume it in a project after this webinar, you can see how it will get set up from here. And hopefully the documentation is good enough that you shouldn't have any questions. Cool. So that's what SpecFlowActions is and what it aims to do. So for anyone that hasn't used Playwright before, I guess more people may be familiar with Selenium. So I guess Playwright is Microsoft's implementation or similar thing to Selenium. So it enables you to, interact with your web UI, much like Selenium does. So the action that we've built for this will handle all that stuff. So ultimately, it makes it easier for you to just consume one class or two and get started and not have to worry about any of the kind of setup stuff that happens. So we're obviously going to be creating a project today, excuse me. And this is the application that we're going to be testing. So some of you may be familiar. We've seen this one before in other webinars, but it's our SpecFlow calculator. It only has one function, which is to add, so not a very good calculator, but nevertheless, it has some basic functionality where we can add these numbers together and we can reset the fields so they're blank. And this is what we're going to be focusing on today. Cool. So some prerequisites for anyone that plans to use SpecFlow as I'm launching Visual Studio. I already have our IDE extension installed, which is the SpecFlow 2019 extension. We also have an extension for Visual Studio 2022. So if you're using that IDE, you can go ahead and install that. We also have a plugin for JetBrains Rider. So anyone that's using Rider on a Mac can also take advantage of our official plugin. So you'll need those things before you can start using SpecFlow. Cool, so let's get right into it. So first thing we need to do is we'll create a new project. This will be a test project. And because I have the extension installed, I get this project template from SpecFlow. So that's what we'll be using today. Not mandatory, but definitely useful. Includes all of the NuGet packages you need already installed as a template, so you can get started straight away. And we'll call this project SpecFlow Calculator. Not steps. Call it specs, and we'll create the project. And you can see that we have these framework options, but for today's purposes, we're going to use .NET Core 3.1 and also the SpecFlow Plus runner. And there's a handy dandy little checkbox here because we would like to use the Fluent Assertions library for our assertions. If you're not sure what that is, feel free to Google it. It's just a nice assertions library that we like here at SpecFlow. So hopefully this won't take too long to load. Cool. So you can see here we've got our project template, and because we've used the SpecFlow template, we get a bunch of kind of dummy files here. So we get one feature and one step definition, both of which we will use today. So the first thing we need to do then, so we've got a brand new project, and for the sake of tidiness, we need some sort of object or class to represent our application or page. So if we right click on the project, go to add, and we're just going to create a new folder, and we'll call this I don't know, calculator page, or sorry, page objects, object, and then we'll add a new class. I'm going to create a base class. So I'm going to call this base page. And the reason for that will become apparent in just a second. So we're going to make use of, okay, we'll just make this quickly. We're going to make use of SpecFlow dependency and constructor injection. So the first, I guess, package related object or SpecFlowActions related project is called BrowserDriver. And we don't yet have a reference to the NuGet package. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we right click on our project and manage NuGet packages, we can go SpecFlowActions and under browse, not installed. And we should see, if we look at the list of the NuGet packages, we'll see this one here, SpecFlowActions Playwright. So we'll go ahead and install the latest version. And hopefully, if we control and dot on this, we can see now that IntelliSense is saying, would you like to use this, this package? Yes, we would. Cool. So this is the BrowserDriver object. This is the, the only mandatory class that you'll need to to consume to get started with this. There is another one which contains some helper methods to do some UI interactions, but we'll get onto that in just a second. So what we're going to do is in our base page, we're going to create a local field. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to paste this in. And we will resolve these things. And you can see here, this is an object from Playwright, which is an iPage object. And we'll simply create a new page using our driver instance. Why is this complaining? Of course, because I don't have an implementation for this yet, which is it. There we go, good. Cool, so what this does is it takes in the browser driver, which is automatically resolved by SpecFlow, injects it into our base page, and then using the current driver instance, we're returning a new page object, which is all our base class is going to do. And this just keeps things tidy, and we can consume this base page in another class. So that's what we'll do now. So let's add another class, and I'm going to call it calculator page. And this object is going to represent, obviously, our, did I close it? Yes, I did. That's not helpful. It's going to represent our calculator page and all of the page elements and the interactions that we will be using. So first thing we need in our calculator page is a reference to where the page exists. So I'm going to add this field here, which is just the URL of the page. And this way we can go to this page as and when we need to. We'll just reference this field and happy days. And we also need some selectors. So these are the IDs of the page elements. I'm just going to reopen this page for a bit of context. And if I just inspect this, so you can see that the ID of the first number field is first number, and so on and so forth. And the same is true for all the other elements. So that's how we're going to hook into the page. And obviously we need some way of some interactions between our code and the page. And this is when our second class comes in. So I'm going to generate a new constructor. And this needs to come from our base page. And then this is going to complain at me. So if we control and dot, brilliant. This is not helpful. I'm just going to copy and paste it. So here's our correct looking constructor even. And basically it gives us access to this, this page that gets created, obviously, when the object is instantiated. We need to add our references here and also create our local field, which is calculator page interactions. And this is another class. And if I just F12 into this, we can get a little sneak peek about what this object does. So this is the object that I suggested earlier is kind of a library of helper methods. So you can see here we've got basic functionality like clicking, getting value attributes, going to URL, sending text, things like this. And anyone that's familiar with Selenium will probably notice that all of these Playwright methods are actually asynchronous. And there's some mechanism built into Playwright by which that it waits for the task to have a result, essentially, which is nice. Cool. So now we have this interactions. We can actually do some interactions. So I will just copy and paste these things in, but I will talk about them. Just bear with me 1 second. Cool. So let me just resolve this. Cool. So I know I've essentially skipped a bunch of things, but it would take me a while to write them out. So that's not useful for you guys. So let's talk about this. So we have these methods in our calculator page where we can interact with our elements. So we've got this enter first number async where we can pass in a number. And then the implementation of this is we're using our interactions object and we're sending text, and then we're passing in the selector, which is the ID that we have up here, and also the value that we're looking to pass in. The same is true for this one. This is clicking. As you can see, it's quite simple to use. This one's a little bit more complicated. So we have some custom logic here where we're waiting for the page to be opened and also resetting. So for example, if we come to the page and it already has some values in it, then we're effectively just resetting it before the next test. We can reset it before the test continues or starts. And likewise, these methods here, this wait for non-empty result, waits for a result. And also likewise wait for an empty result. So just to recap quickly, I appreciate that was a bunch of stuff being thrown at you all at once. So there's two classes. One of them is mandatory, which is the BrowserDriver. And we've kind of left it this way. So, you can consume it and do with it what you want and come up with your own implementations for things. We didn't want to lock people down to doing things a certain way. And the second class is this interactions, which just provides a mechanism by which, common page interactions is just handy if you want to, if you've got a simple application and you want to get things started sooner. Cool. So this is the complete implementation. And let me know if I'm too zoomed out. Do I need to zoom in? Let me know. Let Katerina know. She'll bother me if you can't see this. So we need to actually consume this in some way now. So we've got our page implementation. We're ready to do our interaction. So let's get into that. So one thing that we should do before we execute our test is actually make sure that we're going to the calculator, that we're opening the page first, so then we can carry out our tests. And it makes sense to do that in a hooks file. So for anyone that doesn't know what a SpecFlow hooks file is it basically hooks into the execution engine and enables us to do stuff in certain time frames in the test. So before the test begins, before a particular scenario starts, afterwards, things like this. So you can find the template for this if you have the extension again. Just type in hooks and we'll just call it hooks.cs. You can have multiple hooks files. If you've got some environment setup stuff that you'd like to do that doesn't necessarily pertain to the tests themselves, you can, order the execution of these things. So you can have, for example, 2 before scenario hooks in different files, and you can order these so they will run in a certain order. But I won't get into too much detail because we're concentrating on Playwright today.
There's a question. Do you have to have the elements declared static?
No.
No. Okay.
No. Yeah. Let's not. Maybe I guess don't read too much into implementation because for anyone, everyone's use case is different. You can do it however you please. You just need a way of locating the elements. You could just pass it straight in here. You could store it in another file. You just need, this just takes in a string, which is the selector, and do with that what you will, basically. This is just how I've set it up, that's all. So I hope that answered your question. So back to the hooks. As I say, one thing we need to do is go to the page. So let's get rid of this stuff because we just don't need it. And I'll paste in this code here. So get rid of these. So you can see here we've got this before scenario attribute. So this means that this will execute before the scenario begins. And we're awaiting this calculator page, which I'll just resolve quickly. And also this. Okay, good. So as I was saying, we're injecting our calculator page, which is this object here. And then we're calling the ensure calculation is open and reset async. and this is automatically resolved by SpecFlow behind the scenes. So you can just use parameter injection. This isn't a constructor. Obviously, it's not constructor injection, but you can also inject parameters, which is super useful. So if anyone was wondering how on earth this object gets resolved, it just does. You obviously can't see that logic, but it does. Cool. So with that, there's only one other thing that we need to make this work. And that is a config file. So I'm going to add a new item to the project, and I'm going to search for JSON. So it isn't this one. It isn't this SpecFlow JSON configuration. We actually just need a JSON file, but the naming is very specific. It needs to be SpecFlow, not JSON.json. It needs to be SpecFlowActions.json, and I believe it is case sensitive. So I could be wrong, but just be aware that that could trip you up if you're planning to try this. And the extension is expecting this config to be there. If it isn't, then you will run into issues. So the content that we need in here is, well, there's only one that you need actually, is this Playwright key and the value for a browser. So that's all that's mandatory. We'll look at the config options at the end. I'll show you the documentation in GitHub, but effectively this is irrelevant. This is all you need. What you see is all you need here to actually get this working. It will actually run headless by default. So for the sake of the presentation, I'm going to add this value here so we can actually see things in action. And that's it. That should be it in terms of the setup. We obviously need to have some sort of implementation in our step definition. So that's what we will do now. Steps. Cool. So let's get rid. Do I have these somewhere? No, I do not. That's super useful. Okay, so let's get rid of this boilerplate code because we don't need it. And there's some other questions I can see. So is there anything for me, Katerina, before we continue?
We can answer it at the end of the session. Okay. One question, how about parallel execution?
Okay, fine. Yes.
Explain it later.
Yes, I will cover that at the end. So good. So we have our object, which is our calculator page. And we now know that before we execute any scenarios, we're going to make sure that the calculator is open and reset. Now we need an implementation for our feature file. And this is the default one, which is just add two numbers. Anyone that's used this template before will be very familiar with this. So we already have everything bound. So we need to actually just come up with this implementation. So what we're going to do is, again, we're going to inject our calculator. And we'll call it calculator page. And we'll just resolve this. And you can see using SpecFlow calculator specs page object. And if we control and click on this, it will automatically assign a field for us. And now we're ready to go. So let's say this calculator page, and then we should have something for enter first number. And we pass in our number. Why is this complaining? Oh, obviously we need to await it because it's asynchronous, and we need to change the method. This is expecting a string. So in fact, let's just change the typing. For some reason, I did copy this, so I could have just copied and pasted, but it's fine. I've misplaced it, so we'll just type it out. All of these will need to be a string. And we also need to do something with the second number. So we will await this dot calculator page, enter second number async, number. And we need to, I'm not going to type this, just make it asynchronous. And then obviously we've now entered our first number, we've entered our second number. We need to add these. So we will also await the calculator to add, click add async. Async ask. Good, this is happy. And then we need to hopefully do our assertion and see the correct result. So we'll say we also need to await this. This calculator page. Wait for non-empty result async. And this returns us our value. Yes, it does. So we'll say our result equals. Why is this complaining? Oh, yes, of course. Good, we're happy. And this is fine. And then we'll say result should. This is where fluent assertions comes in. And we'll just need to control and dot, and we'll say using fluent assertions. There we go. So 2 seconds. Why can't this be declared? Ah, sorry, yes. It's obviously because the parameter is called. So let me just update this. Cool. So if we build the project, hopefully everything's happy. So if this is the first time you're using Playwright, you will need to, or I'd advise you follow the Playwright documents, which I don't have a link to, but we should. Let me just go there. There's a getting started guide on their site. And it tells us about the installation. So if we scroll down, you need to call a command line argument, and I'll paste it in the chat. If I can open it. This will install Playwright onto your local machine. This one's for TypeScript. So if you look at the docs, there is the correct one for C#. It's obviously not here, but it is in our documentation. So apologies for that. But yeah, I've pasted it in the chat window anyway. So you'll need to open the command line and run this command, and we'll see that mine's already installed. But if yours isn't, then you'll see a green message saying hopefully that it's been installed successfully. And that's the only other prerequisite to executing these tests. So now we've got our implementation. Everything should be fine if I haven't missed anything. So if we have a look in our Test Explorer window, we should see our test and it should execute. For some reason, I've got a bad feeling about this, but let's see. Is there any questions just while this is executing, Katrina?
Everything can be answered. And then one is, was installed CMD posted?
Say again, sorry?
You can read probably. Was installed CMD posted? CMD.
I don't know. Was it install command posted? Yeah, if you're talking about the one that obviously it failed, great. Yes, I've just posted in the chat. So .NET tool install global Microsoft Playwright CLI. So if that's what you mean, then yes. And if not, then let me know. So let's see why this failed. And every time I fall into this trap, and hopefully this is a good thing because it means that you hopefully won't fall into this trap. So although we've added the config into the project, we need to actually set it as content and to copy to the build output directory when we do a build. So if you're either missing the config or you haven't set it to copy, this is what you'll see. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can right click on the file, go to properties, and then build action. We need to set as content. And then the output directory is, well, it can be copy always or copy if newer, which is probably preferred. Excuse me. And then if we do a build and then retest, hopefully the demo gods are on our side. I don't think I've forgotten anything. So let's see, pray for a browser window. Yes, good. Thank God. Cool, good. So you can see that with relative ease, we've gone ahead and installed the plugin. We've consumed the classes that we need to consume, and we've set up our first test. So just to expand a little bit, and so someone mentioned parallel execution earlier. Let's extend this this project to make use of that stuff. So let me quickly whip here, and this I did take down in preparation. So now we've got 4 tests, each of which do some calculations. So if we rebuild this, we should see these in the Test Explorer window. And one other thing we'll need to do is to just add a spec run profile file. So if we come to the project, add new item, and if you've got the SpecFlow extension, you'll see this by default if you search for SR profile. There we go, and we'll call this default because that's the naming it looks for out of the box. And if you call it something different, then you actually need to do some extra steps. But for the sake of the demo, we'll keep this here. So I'm going to get rid of this stop after failures. We'll set it to 1. But the important one is this test thread count. So I'm running in a VM, so it's not very fast. So I'll set this to 2, and hopefully it will still showcase the point in question. And we should see the tests execute in parallel. So the build is done. Let's kick these off. Just while this is running, one other thing as well is you obviously need the binaries for the browser. So we can see now we've got 2 windows open. Sorry to jump around there. Let's just observe this for a second. So obviously, if you're running on a hosted agent that's got plenty of performance, you can make use of the thread count. Or if you're integrating with someone like BrowserStack, if you've got the threads, you can jack that number right up. I've previously used 10 threads at once before, which is pretty cool. But I wouldn't recommend doing it on your local machine, even if you do have a powerful laptop, because it can very quickly turn bad. So that's parallel execution. And one other thing I would like to show is how easy it is to switch browsers. And I'll come back to the binaries topic now. So there's a command, which I have here, which I'll paste in the chat. So you do actually need to, again, open the command line. And you will actually need to go into the directory, which is the project root directory. So if we go to users, SpecFlow webinars, source, repos, and then here, so you can copy this path. So a little tip, if you shift and right click on a folder, there's this copy as path option. And if you paste that in, we'll go into this directory, and then you can install all of the browsers. And there is some command line arguments you can use to only install certain browsers or exclude some, but yeah, Playwright install will just go ahead and install all the binaries that you need, and that's it. You can get started if you don't already have them there. Let's just change this to Firefox just for the sake of simplicity, and you'll be able to see how easy it is to switch between browsers. I think Chromium, Edge, Firefox, and Chrome are supported, if I am not mistaken. But again, Playwright's documentation, and I think our documentation shows which browsers are supported anyway. So hopefully now we'll see Firefox launch. Yep, and we do. And as I mentioned earlier, if you don't want to see the browser at all, then you just need to remove the headless property from your JSON, and everything will execute in headless mode by default. So,
and one thing there is also so a message in Q&A tools that people doesn't see that you posted the comments in chat, but I can see it. So probably you have to just have a look at chat, not in Q&A tool, but in chat.
I think the chat doesn't work. Oh, am I?
No, I see your message.
Yeah, I'm just checking that I sent it to. Yeah, I sent it to all panelists. Huh.
Yes, I can see. So should be.
But both thing you post in chat doesn't show up on screen here. I'm confused by this, but so if we paste something in chat, then it's not showing up in chat. Is that what? I'm unsure of what this means. Either way, I can see people right now. Yeah, so I mean, I can see other people's. So hopefully, if anyone else is having issues seeing the things I'm pasting into the chat, then let us know. Cool. I can also see some other questions in the chat, Katharina. So we've kind of concluded the demonstration part of this. So let me just quickly cover some of these. If you've got any questions, please put them in the Q&A, because it actually helps us in regards to reporting. So does Playwright have actions like mouse over? Good question. My knowledge of Playwright is actually limited because my expertise is with Selenium. So I would say go and check out the documentation for Playwright. I'm sure they'll have your answers. What else do we have here? Use everyone option. Cool. Let's still talk about chat.
Say that you have to use everyone option and send again the.
Oh yes, yeah, you're totally right. All panelists and attendees. Yes. Cool. I will paste the links in. So let me just quickly grab them. But again, these are all on the Playwright docs and in ours. So there's the first one. Hopefully you can all see that this time. .NET tool install global Microsoft Playwright.cli. And the other one was the one to install all of the browser binaries. Can't get my words out today. Cool. So they're now in the chat successfully, which is perfect. So before we go to Q&A, let me go to SpecFlow.org and I want to talk about the other config options that we have. So some of you might be thinking, what about, how do I set up capabilities? What about if I want my browser to do something that I haven't shown today? Well, I will hopefully clear that up for you if my virtual machine doesn't crash or have some sort of fit. Let's go to the GitHub repo. Also, if anyone wants to extend this project, feel free. This is all open source. So, if there's some cool idea that you have that people will find useful, feel free to open a pull request and we'll obviously review it. The duration of the webinar is due to finish on the hour. So the webinar is an hour long. Sorry, I was just replying to someone's query. Cool. So these are the browsers: Chromium, Firefox, Edge, and Chrome. I think that's what I said earlier. So that was good. And the configuration options here. You can see here, if we scroll down, supported browser arguments can be defined from the configuration. They are browser specific, of course, but they can be passed in this manner, which is an array of arguments. We also have this default timeout value, but if you want to get into the details of the implementation, you can of course just browse at your leisure through the code. It's all available. It's all public, so that's all good. And also there's basically what I've done today, but just as an example here. So, if you're confused about anything you've seen or want to find out a bit more about how it works, then you can totally just come here, and I will paste this in the chat to everyone this time. There we go. Oh, thanks, Katharina.
Okay.
Cool. So I think that's probably it from my side. So I'll keep sharing my screen in case anyone needs anything demonstrated, but maybe we could go through the Q&A now, if that's okay.
Okay, let's start Q&A. So I'm starting the poll, and here we go. So the first question is, are you interested in this plugin? And the second one, what other plugins would you like to see? So can you see the poll, Jordan?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. People are voting, so it's good.
Cool. So it looks like people are mostly interested, which is good. And there's some people suggesting what other plugins they would like to see. We have recently done one for Windows App Driver, so that is available now for you to consume. So if you want to test any desktop applications, we already have an action for that now, which is cool. Okay, so let's end the polling there. And if we could share.
Result.
Cool. So good. 97% of people are interested. That's perfect. I'm sorry that we've fallen short for that one person. Maybe let us know why you're not interested. Cool. Looks like we should focus on doing a plugin for Appium next. So cool. Cool. Let's ask questions.
Let's go to the question. So do you want me to share the screen? Or let's stay by your own?
Yeah, we'll stay. Yeah.
So let's go to the question. So the first question. This seems like a lot of manual coding to test a few fields. For large complex applications, it would be a full coding effort. Is there a way to record the object and have the code auto-generate, like user interface automation tools?
So I disagree. I don't feel like it's a lot of effort. Maybe it seemed like a lot of effort because I was talking through it, but it's just one class or two if you want to use the helper method. So any of this other stuff like the feature and the steps, it's all going to be there anyway if you're testing via SpecFlow. And to answer your question, is there a way to record the objects and have the code also generate? No, it's not. What's it like? Selenium IDE, I think there's something similar called that where you can record your user interactions. There's nothing like that. This is all manual stuff. So cool.
Okay, the next question. How about parallel execution?
Yeah, so if you want to test in parallel, obviously each test runner has its own kind of implementation for this. We're using the SpecFlow Plus runner here. So to take advantage of the runner and its parallel features, you just need this default profile or a spec run profile file. And then you just need to specify the test thread count. If you're looking to use NUnit or other execution engines, then you will need to look up specifically for that runner how you can manage that. But this is how you do it for the SpecFlow Plus runner.
Okay, so then it doesn't say links to me too. Hopefully now you have some links.
Yeah.
Obviously, we are not that familiar with Zoom as everyone else, but okay. So the next question, I don't know, 41G, what does it mean? I don't know.
It's a good question. Whoever that was, Mohit. please let us know what that means if you'd like a question answered.
So, does the default asynchronous method work for the dynamic fields that are conditional?
Default async method work for dynamic fields that are conditional. Do you mean dynamic as in the typing is dynamic, as in a return to dynamic object? I'm not sure to specifically what you're referring to, so maybe you could ask it again with a bit more detail and hopefully I can answer it. Yes, you will have a recording of the webinar.
Oh, yes, I will send it tomorrow with the certificates. So.
Cool. Yeah. Next question. Sorry.
Yes. Does it attack this one I already asked? Can this run in Visual Studio Code?
No. This is a NuGet package for Visual Studio or Rider, I guess, or any .NET based IDE. Yes, I don't think so.
Playwright can generate objects using code again from the terminal. Code gen.
Say it again, sorry. Is that the Playwright can record all objects using code gen? Okay, cool. That's good to know. So there you go. That I think that answers somebody else's question earlier. As I say, my expertise isn't Playwright, so thank you for answering that for them.
Oh, how would you implement step objects?
How would you implement step objects? Do you mean like a step definition, like a new class? If you do, then you can just add a new item and search for step definition. If you've got the extension installed, which you will have if you're using SpecFlow, then you can create a template for a step definition. Hopefully that's what you meant. Let me know if it isn't. Yeah.
So the next one, Jordan, you can see it's an NFT Playwright.
Gen website. Yeah, I think that's
answering to last question.
Yeah.
So as in if I select yes in the radio field, the next text box appears C. Is this
okay, so I guess this is part of another question, and I'm guessing it was the dynamic one, which let me just go back to it.
Yes.
For the context. Yes. So the whole point is say if you're interacting with a page element, you know, and you click something and then all of a sudden some other content loads, yes, it will wait. Hopefully that's what you were asking.
Is this plugin good to use for user interface?
Yes. So I'm not sure. Again, that question's pretty loose. If you mean for testing web UIs, then yes. Maybe you could put some more context. But hopefully that answers your question.
So that's all.
Okay.
And I think all the question in the chat you already answered.
Okay, good.
So
yeah, in that case, I'll stop sharing.
Okay, let me share my screen. Okay, 1 second. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the next slide. So before we end, I would like to draw your attention to our Community Hero program. You can, Robert, can you please paste the link so we can click.
Yeah.
So the idea is that you can submit your contributions. It can be GitHub contribution, video content, blog articles, and various contexts. We will review it and select the best one, and we will send you $25 Amazon voucher gift. So please give it a try, click the link, visit it, and submit your contributions. We will really appreciate it. And thank you for joining our webinar. Here's the links for our social media channels. Please follow us, like our posts, comment, and thanks a lot. And see you on the next in the next webinar.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.